Fun and thank you. Oh, not yet.
Now we're live.
Now we're live. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will get right to it and start by approving last month's minutes from October 24th. They've been distributed and everybody's had a chance to take a look. Do I have a motion? Artie is
I'll make a
moved it.
motion.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right, John, yes or no on minutes?
I wasn't here. actually.
Okay. Oh, I wasn't either.
Jill and I were here and they're fine.
Okay. They're approved. Excellent. All righty. So we're going to take our cases out of order tonight because I think Harrison would like to come at the end. That's right. Isn't it, Sarah? Okay, great. So we'll start off with Luthra, 15 Hendrick Lane South.
If you're here to represent 15 Hendrick Lane South, can you please hit the raised hand button?
Was Mr. Vetrano last month?
I couldn't remember.
Right.
Yes, he's here.
Great.
It's gotcha.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Gene Vetrano. I'm with Site Design Consultants, and we're here representing Dr. and Mrs. J. Luthra in regards to a four-season sunroom addition to their home. I want to thank the board for allowing me to come back to this meeting, having appeared at the last meeting before a board that was not a full board. I will try to share my screen. Okay, thank you. Before I go back to the plan, I would just like to mention that I spoke to Dr. Luthra again this morning. I don't know if he's on this meeting or not, but he did mention that a board member did visit his property, I guess, after the last meeting. And he mentioned to me that the board member said that he acknowledged that the shed, which we're looking for a variance for setback and for coverage, that was previously approved. Now, I don't have any of that paperwork, and I'm not sure of which board member did attend, but Dr. Luthra did share that with me. So I don't know if we want to discuss the shed separately, and if the board member that was there that spoke to Dr. Luthra, if he could bring us up to date, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Well, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Charlie, but he's not here, obviously.
Oh, he's not here. Okay.
Well, I mean, if it was him,
him.
I doesn't
Well,
sound like Charlie.
Yeah, but if it's, the rest of us are here, so
Could you
ask-
one of us.
yeah.
You asked for an ID.
Interesting. All right. Let's put the shed aside for a moment and
Sure.
start the main.
All
That's
right,
all.
I'm going to try to make this a little simpler than my last presentation. Again, I just want to remind everyone that the Luthras purchased this home 20 years ago, and in 2010 there was a variance that was issued for a lot coverage of 4,647 square feet. This survey or plot plan that's on the left, that's the survey or plot plan that was submitted with that application. And you could see that everything was on this plot except for the fountain area. That's the only thing that was new. And this survey to the right, that's the survey that was recently performed by Ward Carpenter. You can notice here, that's the deck that we propose to remove and to build the sunroom within that footprint. And actually the footprint of the sunroom is smaller than the deck that's going to be removed. Now, to complicate things a little further, the variance that was issued was for 4,647 square feet. And when I was appearing before the planning board and had to do the coverage calculations that they were interested in, I went over this with Doug Hahn on more than one occasion. And when I calculated all of the square footage of this site plan that was submitted for the 2010 project, it came out to 4,977 square feet. So somewhere between the variance that was issued for 4647 and 4977, there was no addition to the home. This is the exact site plan that was submitted for that project. So when I spoke to Doug, he said, well, look, just go ahead, note those areas, and then when you do your new site plan, calculate the new coverage, and then base it on that increase over the 4977. So with that being said, see if I can make this a bit larger for you. So again, this is the new site plan taken from the survey performed by Ward Carpenter. And as you can notice, the fountain area is new. That was not there in 2010. That was added after that submission. And this is the proposed sunroom that's going on part of the footprint of the deck that we're proposing to remove. With that being said, the new coverage is 5,355 square feet. So when I deduct the previous square footage of 4,977 from the 5,355, it's an increase of 378 square feet. So I realized that there were a few things happening here. Although we're asking for a variance for the sunroom on an existing deck, the fountain was never filed for either. And when I spoke to Ed, and again, I note that he didn't use the word non-conforming or not legalized, but so I'm guessing with this variance, we're requesting the approval of the coverage of the fountain plus the coverage of the sunroom on an existing deck where we're actually lessening the square footage.
Okay, but let me just clarify for a minute. So was the deck ever approved? Did you ever?
Yes, the deck was approved. The deck was part
The
of,
deck was approved, the
Yeah.
fountain was not.
the fountain was, yeah, so the deck was part of this project. Again, I'll blow it up a little bit. I showed the deck in dashed line. This was part of the project.
The
The
variance
deck-
was granted for that project that you're
Yes.
showing us right now,
Yes.
and the work was done.
Yes, but the square footage, whoever made that submission, they calculated the square footage at 4647. We calculated it at more than one occasion, the exact same footprint at 4977. So there's a difference here. When I mentioned this to Ed, he kind of recognized that, and I didn't know what direction to go in, because this was approved. Only the 4647 was the variance that was granted. It wasn't granted on the 4977, but that existed in 2010 when they added this composite deck in the front and when they added this deck on the side that we're removing. So
And that does not include the fountain, which is why we're getting to
that's
5,000.
yes, that's why we're at 5,355. The fountain is 386 square feet. Right, that's here. Right, in the sunroom footprint, the new sunroom is 339 square feet, I apologize. And that's going on a deck that was 357 square feet. So the footprint of the sunroom is actually 19 square feet less than the deck that was previously approved. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
First thing that's just jumping out to me right away is, so I guess you are asking for a legalization of the fountain, but it wasn't noticed that way, right?
Right. I mean, again, yeah, that it wasn't, because I was looking for, again, when I
Notice
spoke to
that.
Ed, it was for the
Wasn't noticed as
sunroom.
far as I can tell.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
And did Ed tell you you needed to get the fountain legalized?
Well, he told me it wasn't legalized. He said that must have been part of the problem why the square footage was so high. I don't know if Ed's there or if he's away, but we had this discussion. I told him, I said, Ed, when I'm running the numbers, I mean, it appears that the fountain was never legalized.
Okay, so that's one issue I think we might have to address before we move forward on this. But while
Sure.
we have you here, let me just ask you,
Yes.
how much over allowable is the coverage as it exists right now at 4,000? I'm sorry,
Well, it is
5,000.
you have exist. All right, so right now, it's 7.6 above existing. All right, so the previous allowance was 115.2%. That was a 46.47. Let me go back to this chart.
Gotcha.
Let me go back to this chart.
So it's going to be
Substantial.
substantial.
Yeah. So here, these are adjoining properties. So the new, with that sunroom, it's 126.77. Now there's a parcel at 33 Hendrick that has a coverage of 154.66.
And have you done like a comparison of the whole neighborhood there?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, have 179, 94.96, 85.98, 93.89. So it's just, and this
One is
the only
is
one that
sort of
stands
out.
out. Right. And this one is just a bit higher.
Okay, so I guess the first problem I'm seeing off the bat is that it wasn't noticed as an approval for the variance, for the fountain. So I don't know that any of us even looked at the fountain or you have any neighbors who would like to be heard on this. They were not given notice that this was before the board today.
Right. See, and
The second problem I think we're going to have here is I have no information about the shed being approved, and I didn't see that in your submission.
well, I found out today from Dr. Luther. I wonder if he's on. I don't know if he's on this Zoom meeting or not. But a board
Does-
member, he said a board member came. He didn't give me his name because the board member if anyone remembers, I believe he's the board member that questioned that these were steps in the back.
Yeah, it was Charlie. Charles not here tonight.
Right. He was the one that went and he said to Dr. Luther, well, there are a few steps here and I have pictures of it. And Dr. Luther, he said, well, look, I'll gladly remove those. Let me just bring this up if I may. No, that's not the one.
Well, how much are those
Absolutely.
steps? What's the steps show? Not that
It's
much.
actually there are half a dozen pavers that are laying on the flat and they're between a garden. And Dr. Luther said, I'll gladly remove those if that becomes an issue. That was, but the gentleman that questioned that, he was there and he walked the property. And I believe he was also, as someone at the board said, you were on the board 10 years ago when that variance was issued. And he said that he would go back into the file and check.
He wasn't on the
That's
board.
not
10
true.
years.
Yeah,
Well,
that wasn't-
someone told someone, and again, I unfortunately, I don't know
Imposter
the
out
names of the
there,
members.
Well, the other issue is just to think about is that, even though you say you're making the deck smaller, the deck is at grade, correct? Is it at grade?
The deck is
Deck?
3 feet, it's 3 feet off grade.
Yeah, and now you're replacing it with a structure. right?
Yes,
The structure,
yes,
How
yes.
tall?
Yes.
How tall, what's the dimensions of
I
the,
will go to, hold on, I'll
the height?
So here's the sunroom. It is 19 feet, 11 inches above finished grade.
It's 19 feet high?
To the ridge. Yep. Here's the sunroom here. Here's finished grade. Here's the ridge. I apologize. It's 15 feet 11. I apologize. 15, 11 to the ridge off of grade. And you can see the grade slopes. It's approximately 3 feet here and it's maybe 2 feet off grade here. And again, here's the footprint of the deck that was previously approved, that's being removed, and this is the footprint of the proposed sunroom. We're going to salvage these stairs and then wind them back in to accommodate this exit from the sunroom.
My instinct, and anybody jump in if they think I'm wrong or want to make another point, is that this has to be renoticed. We have to take a look at the fountain, and maybe even get an opinion from Ed on this, just because it wasn't in our materials that there was a fountain we should be looking at.
Oh, gee, I
And
spoke to Ed about that.
also to speak to Ed about what the deal is with the shed. I find it hard to believe the shed is legal, to be honest with you.
The denial
Dr. Luther
said-
said the shed was there for 20 years.
Or I'm sorry, the Four Seasons room and the shed.
And the
That's
shed,
notice.
Right, but not
right,
the
that's the
fountain.
notice, right,
That
So-
was the denial letter.
right, okay, so, yeah.
Four Seasons room and legalizing.
And legalizing the shed, right, okay, so, yeah, I mean, all of our information is that the shed is before us to be legalized. But I still think this needs to be renoticed as to the
Yeah.
fountain. Does anybody disagree with me?
I agree.
Okay,
We all agree. And I think also that when you come back, you should also think ahead a little bit, maybe think there's anything else you can remove from the coverage that you might be willing to give back, because it's a heck of a lot of coverage.
Is I mean, unfortunately, that's the driveway with a composite deck over it. That's the deck we're replacing. There's really very, very little back here. There's some composite decking in the back that Dr. Luther may be willing to give up. I mean, basically, let me go back. There's a pad or two, but for emergency generator.
You have,
there's a
you have,
pad in the back
you have a
for-
photo of the fountain? I've not been there. I apologize. But you have
I believe I do. If you give me 1 second. I think I have it on one of the drawings.
And when was the fountain constructed?
The only thing Dr. Luther told me was it was after 2010.
2010, yeah,
So it was constructed by the current owner.
right,
I believe so. That's correct. And actually, it's here. That's it. Actually, it's a garden fountain. There it is here. It's right in front of the home. Right here. Most of it is planted. I mean, I guess if I went back and actually measured the rock, and if, there's gravel in here, maybe I can get that number down a little bit just by recalculating the actual surface covered by the
what's the size of the fountain in your coverage calculations?
hold on 1 second. Let me go back to that sheet if I may. It is. Fountain and stone steps, 386 square feet.
okay. Well, look, we're gonna bounce this to our next meeting. It does need to be renoticed because we need to account for the fact that you're asking for the legalization of the fountain. And my opinion, and again, anybody's free to disagree with me if they like, and if so, please say so. But my opinion would be that you should probably talk to your client about how much they really want that shed and how much they might be willing to cut in terms of coverage, because it is a big number. And that fountain number brings it up, and you're asking for a little bit more than we initially thought. So I would give that a second thought and come back to us for the next meeting.
So let me ask you if I may, if I go back there and take I guess a video, or if I could, typically, do you meet on site with the client and the representative to maybe take a look at that? Maybe we can just get that number down by just measuring the actual rock surface, because again,
mean, yeah, We'll come and look, not as a group, but individually. We try to get over to properties and take a look. I'll tell you, look at the fountain, because I didn't know it was an issue.
Yeah, so I thought Ed had mentioned that to you, because that the conversation I had with him, yeah. He had said
but,
the fountain is definitely an issue.
So, but we don't come as a group. I mean, we just sort
Okay.
of each come when we can.
Sure.
We're not even allowed to come as a group. It
Oh,
wouldn't be-
interesting. Okay, because some communities they do, and we just did a job up in Pound Ridge. The whole committee came to Pound Ridge.
Exactly.
Ex parte.
So we will see you at the next meeting, but it does need to be renoticed.
All right, so let me ask you something. So we're going to renotice. I will ask for a variance to include legalization of the existing fountain. Is that the verbiage?
I would call Ed either, I don't know if Ed's here the rest of the week, but maybe
Fine.
next week, I would give Ed a call and ask him. I think it needs to be renoticed as the shed, the fountain, and the deck. That's what I think. Yeah, sorry, sunroom, yeah. Replacing the
Sunroom.
deck.
Well, but see, again, if we take the fountain away, the deck was approved with the variance.
Well, you
that
don't
had the
need,
wrong
you don't need
number.
approval for the deck, but you want to replace the deck with a sunroom.
Yes,
So you need to notice that. And the fountain, as far as I can tell, the fountain in the shed. But again, I would call Ed and check up on that. He will give you some, I'm sure he'll be willing to give you some guidance on that.
Well,
Okay,
the-
if-
the- It was noticed and so was the Four Seasons room.
So it's really just the fountain,
Well,
we think,
yeah, well, those were the only two things on the denial letter
right?
from the planning board.
yeah, they were the only things on the, that's why we noticed it for the sunroom. No one
How
ever
do we
mentioned
approve that?
the shed. I mean, the fountain.
Yes, okay, yeah, I would definitely call Ed, like I said, I don't know if he's in tomorrow, but he's in tomorrow, so I would
Okay.
give him a call.
If I may ask you one more thing, is there any way
Yes.
that I could go back 10 years to possibly find the resolution that was passed granting the variance for that?
You mean,
floor?
do we have those records?
Yes, I mean, maybe the shed is mentioned there.
I'd be surprised, but
We can ask Sarah.
you
check.
can again call the office and ask,
Check with
and
Sarah, okay.
I'm sure Sarah Palermo will take a look. I don't know if that's something we have. And, I mean, it was in the denial letter this time, so I think you're not gonna find different information.
Probably
But-
not, okay.
Probably not, but take a look.
Be our guest.
Yeah, yeah. Have
Oh,
at it.
thank you very much. I appreciate-
Okay, thank
Thank you
you.
for your time. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you for your
too.
time.
No, thank you. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next case is 90 Fargo Lane.
Scratching your head, you okay? Okay, there's always something new.
Hello, this is John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architecture, representing the Parganos family. Sarah, I just wanted to let you know, we also have Brad Schwartz here. Oh, there he is.
Okay,
He
great.
He raised his hand already. So
Excellent.
we're returning from last month, and we provided some additional information. I know there are members that were not here last month, and if you would like me just to review the original drawings that were presented, I can do that.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you.
So we're in the process of closing out this project that is completed. And as part of that CO process, there was a electrical meter box and meter equipment mounted to an existing pole that was identified as something that was not shown in the original site plan approval. So the pole was shown, but the meter equipment, which is the electrical meter for the house, was not shown. So the planning board had asked us to revise the approval, the site plan approval, to show that meter equipment and to get a variance for that meter equipment being located in the front yard. So we're in front of you for a variance for the meter equipment in the front yard. During the planning board process, there was concern of the visual impact and what that meter equipment looked like on the street. So we have an approval contingent on receiving the variance from the ZBA. And what we proposed to the planning board was some changes to the meter assembly to paint it and clean it up. There's a board, there's sort of a structure that holds the panel that'll be cleaned up and made less sort of incomplete looking. And then also to paint that assembly and paint the meter boxes to match the adjacent plantings. And then also to plant some additional evergreen plantings in that area to screen the box from the street. So if in the site plan, oops, sorry, I'll go through that. So in this area here is where you see the meter box. Let me just make this zoom. I don't know why my cursor's not letting me do it. And this shows in real space the pole and the meter and electrical assembly that's on that pole. And then on the next page of the documents that were submitted last time is a revised planting plan that shows the additional planting that would be proposed to screen that. There were some questions last time we reviewed, and we promised to provide some additional information. So we wrote a letter basically providing renderings of the visual impact mitigation that we were going to show, basically the changes that we would do to both the meter assembly and show the plantings. And then there was a question about whether there are other remote meters and similar conditions in Irvington. We found a few of those to review with you. And then we wasn't asked, but we've also listed a few additional similar structures that would be allowed in a setback, just to give a sense of context and whether it's in character to have things like this in a setback. And then finally, there was a question about what the alternatives were in terms of relocating the meter, specifically relocating the meter to the house. So we went through what the scope of work associated for that would be. Right now, just something that was not addressed in the letter. We don't have a confirmation whether that relocation would be feasible, because it would have to be approved by Con Edison, and we have not started that process, so we can't guarantee that a relocation would be feasible. So just quickly to go through what we presented.
What's the date of that letter, John? Was that submitted? Because I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Oh, on the original one, what's the date on that?
no, it's since the
This-
last meeting.
This is what was submitted for this meeting, Cardi. This was the response this was new material that was submitted at this meeting. So here, the original submission did not include mitigation renderings or really photos of the condition. So this letter shows the condition from the south and the condition to the north, the existing condition to the north. It shows the proposed modifications. So it shows the meter panel and the structure that holds the meter panel painted to match the shrubs, and then also the additional shrubs, which are shown here just at their planted height, but they're skip laurels and they will grow quite high and obscure at the panel. The next item that we included was examples of other panels that are similar. So the first example is a pole mounted panel of similar size, which has also a 400 amp service, that happened at 34 Lewis Road. So this is a project that's currently under construction. And I believe this was in front of the planning board recently along with us, and there's some modifications that are happening. This is at property line. There's some modifications to the driveway in order to have the panel stay in this location. And the panel is being proposed to be screened by plantings.
But John, that was not before the board. We didn't grant the variance for that, did we?
I don't know this. When I said the board, this was
I don't
before the
recall.
planning board. So
We did.
I don't know if this was referred to you for a variance, but this was in the
not.
planning board at the same month that we were, and this specific condition was discussed in the planning board.
But it was not granted variance by us.
Yes, I don't know if it was, you guys would remember it, I think, if it was.
Okay, and we don't, so it didn't.
Yeah. And then also this other example of a pole mounted meter is right across the street from 90 Fargo, 4190. This meter box is unscreened and mounted to a pole. It's a smaller meter box, and I think that has to do most likely with its age. It's probably been there, at least 10 years. It was, a meter for a smaller service. As the buildings decarbonize, meaning that they use electricity for heating and cooling, like our building, as opposed to using gas or oil, the electrical service has increased. So the meter size is larger. And then finally, there's just an image. This is from Legend Hollow area of the kind of electrical equipment that would be typically in a front yard setback that's associated in cases where the power is underground. So in areas where there's poles, there's less material on the ground, but there might be pole mounted stuff. But in areas where there aren't poles, there are much more electrical equipment in the setback on the ground. The next thing we touch base on is just a list of other structures that are allowed in the setback in Irvington. We have fences, obviously, deer fences to 8 feet, retaining walls, paths, sheds with footprints of less than 64 square feet would be allowed, and play equipment without permanent foundations would be allowed. The final piece is we did some analysis based on costing from the process that we just went through. In order to relocate the meter, the conduit and wire between the meter location now and the house would have to be replaced. To replace that wire, you would have to remove the driveway or a portion of the driveway, remove a portion of the landscaping, and there's a few things that make this relatively expensive. The driveway has a heat tracing system in it to melt the snow because of its steepness. There was an issue with getting out of that driveway, so it has a heat trace built into it. There's a retaining wall that would have to be partially removed and modified to get access to the conduit, and then there would be landscaping and irrigation. So we gave sort of a price. It's a relatively large number to make that change. And again, this is all contingent on Con Ed approving that change. Our understanding from the process so far is that Con Ed prefers services of that size on the street. And that's might be why you see in this earlier project the location of the 400 amp service on the pole at the street edge. So that's the additional information that we have for you tonight. And so we would ask if you guys have any other questions or you want me to review anything else.
I have a couple. Legend Hollow, was 40 years ago. They did a subdivision plan there, correct? There was no variances granted by this board to your knowledge, was it?
I don't believe any of that stuff was considered coverage or building at that point. So I doubt any of that would, and also that would have been, there aren't really variances in that neighborhood, right? Because it's been a subdivision that is sort of outside of ZBA. But no, I don't believe there were variances for that.
The $90,000 number, I see that in your letter, but how did you get that?
This is from the cost. The GC is a company that is doing it now. It's the owner's company. And this is based on estimates that they gave based on the work that was put together to put that in. So they have a number for installing the driveway. They have a number for the electrical service when it was installed or the connection was made to the house. They have a number for landscaping. And so this is their estimate based on that number.
You said the owner's estimate. Which owner you're talking about?
So the owner of the house is also the GC acting on the house. So yes, it's the, but they have a separate company that builds projects throughout New York State.
Joe, how long has that electrical box been there?
That electrical box was part of the enlarged, the 400 amp service was part of this project to add on to this house. So there's an existing house there, and the existing house was renovated, and the service was upgraded as part of that renovation. And as part of the upgrade, as necessary for the addition, the meter was located on the pole. But the pole was in place earlier. Pole was in place.
But when the owner built, when the applicant, who's the owner, who's the contractor, built this, he could have built the home with service, not having the meter on the pole in front of the house, correct?
That I'm not sure is correct, because I think that was a direction from Con Ed, the meter location. So I'm not sure of the history of that piece.
Okay. And I know last time you spoke, you said you had nothing to do with this aspect of the construction, meaning the electrical service to the house, correct?
Yeah, I was not part of the decision making on where it would go or the Con Ed coordination of that. That was the electrician.
So do you have some proof that this was there only because Con Ed said they would not service the house, but for the service through that pole?
So John, my understanding from our clients is that Con Ed directed the service meter be located where it currently is. Neither one of us, neither one of us was part of that, but that was what we've been advised.
Okay, I understand what's been advised, but can you get something in writing from back then that Con Ed said, this is the only way we will service this house? Because otherwise it appears that A, it's out of character with the neighborhood, B, it's self-created, and three, it's a hardship that could be corrected without the need for a variance, which are the three of the 4 or 5 prongs that you failed to meet.
We could,
Quite frankly.
we could look for that. I mean, I think the Con Ed record of that we don't have access to. I don't know if there is a written record of the Con Ed. They do have a system where they have their approvals, and if we could potentially get access to a case that's closed, we could get the record of the direction from Con Ed. Getting Con Ed to write a letter, I'm not sure, is something
Not too easy. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
it's
but the
not
burden
something
on the
that is
applicant.
easy to do. I mean, I think in terms of the other things that you the other 2 measures that you brought up, I think those are arguable, whether it's out of character with the neighborhood or whether it can't be mitigated, because I think, you know, that's less clear to me. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, that you would like proof of why the thing was directed there and whether that was clearly a Con Ed requirement, but I think in terms of the other 2 that you listed,
Yeah, I mean,
those are accurate. But
My
Otherwise,
understanding,
it's-
everyone, there's not going to be that documentation. That's what I'm being told by our clients, that there was a discussion with the electrician at the time. And this alternative, while it's one factor of the overall test, the proposal to relocate is just not feasible for our client, given the costs involved. And when you look at the overall balancing test, we don't believe there will be a change in community character. We showed a number of other improvements similar to the electrical boxes, mailboxes, the playground equipment. There's other equipment comparable within the front yard setback. There's no environmental impact. So yes, might there be another alternative? Perhaps, but not feasible for our client. And on balance, there's no impact to the community character or to the
You cannot
environment.
compare this to a mailbox on the front lawn, which the postal service requires to be a number of feet off the street. You don't compare that, but to give a green light to have meters put on homes, on telephone poles in front of their houses throughout the village, it's ludicrous, in my opinion.
And one of the things that
Sorry,
we're showing you, Artie, is that there is another project that is current project that's in sort of a similar condition, where that same thing has been allowed and has been reviewed with the planning board without any issue.
But not by this board.
Is that 34?
That's 34 Lewis Road, which is up on the screen
Does
right
34
now.
Lewis Road have the CO? I think I thought these were just temporary locations until, you know, until the final CO got approved. That's why, you know, looking at Fargo, I thought that was it's on like a piece of plywood. I just thought it was a temporary, you know, I've driven by it many times. I thought it was just a temporary location for the electrical box. Until the
I
final
don't believe the 34 Lewis Road, I believe, is the permanent. There was discussion at the planning board of the permanent screening and the permanent revision to the course of the driveway to provide for the screening. So I don't believe this is a temporary condition at Lewis Road. I don't know if it was
If
considered.
it's within the setback, right? If it's near the curb or at the setback, well, then there needs to be a variance for this.
Well, it is within the setback. I mean, this is the road edge, so.
Well, is that the private road edge? I don't think that's a
I
public
think
road.
that might be a private road, but it at any rate, it hasn't been referred to us, so it
Right.
doesn't
So
matter.
let's focus on the merits of this.
Well, let me just say, are there any other questions from any other board members? No, I think,
Well, I mean, I've noticed around Irvington, unfortunately, skip laurels have been dying because of a mold disease. And I've had friends that have had skip laurels put in, and unfortunately, they've had to replace them with a different type of tree. That's not to say that these skip laurels would survive, or not survive. But if they die,
But if we give a variance, it's there
there.
permanently,
Yeah, it's
right,
there
exactly,
permanently.
is your point, and
Um,
I take that point, yeah.
and
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
The
and-
planting, we could modify if there's any concern about the species or the hardiness of the species, we could consider other species that would have the same effect. I mean, that's not a concern.
And there could be a
Got it.
condition, that's our obligation to always maintain adequate screening, so if they were to die, it would be our obligation to replace with something comparable to achieve the same screening that you see in these photographs.
Con Edis have put electrical meters on the backside of poles, so it's not facing the street.
I just don't have answer to that. That Con Ed has very strict. They have very strict rules associated with, everything from conduit size to the number of risers on pipes to where everything goes, and I'm just not familiar with that. They're not something where you can negotiate with typically. It has to go where they tell you to go. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Why can't this go within the setbacks on the property without cutting through the driveway or the retaining wall?
The pole location where Con Ed makes the drop is set by Con Ed because that there's distance requirements, and so the pole location, and this was an existing pole. Are you saying that maybe I'm not understanding.
Why couldn't you take the meter, put it on a pole within the setback on the applicant's property, so that it's not sitting on the street?
So I think
Without cutting the driveway and without cutting the wall that you say, oh, you have to cut.
so. You mean put a pole back here somewhere?
You don't have to put this on again, I'm not an electrical engineer, but on a property I'm aware of, it's on a pole that's maybe 5 feet tall, and they have the meter sitting there, and that could be somewhere on the property. It's not sitting on the right of way that people don't have to see it. And as I said, you can likely find a place to do it so you don't have to cut the driveway. I mean, I'm looking at the property. I don't know why you can't not cut the driveway and not cut the wall you're talking about.
Again, we haven't gone into that much detail. I think, you're not talking about extending an overhead wire to a new pole here,
No.
are you? No. You're talking about bringing it underground, underground at this point.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm a little confused about, John, is on the one hand, you seem to be saying this is where it is because Con Ed says this is where it is and we can't move it. And on the other hand, you're saying, well, it would cost $90,000 to move it. And those seem to be, in tension with one each other. Is it that Con Ed will not let you move it, or is it that it's too expensive?
We don't have a mechanism to ask them the question right now, because
Okay.
to have a question with Con Ed, you have to open a case file, and there have to be a process to get. They won't answer questions that way, and to be honest, we have not taken it that far. We were asked to sort of look into alternatives, and we sort of looked at what would be the case to put it inside the house, which was the alternative that we were asked to look at last time. And so we looked at that alternative, to put it inside a house, and gave you sort of an estimate of what we think that is. There may be other alternatives that would involve Con Ed. What I just want to stress is that we cannot say that those alternatives are feasible, right? Because it's not up to us to locate the meter. It is part of the utilities purview in terms of locating this setup, this layout.
That's the important point that we wanted to stress to your board, right? The factor again for the variance test is it a feasible alternative? So we tried to show that the disruption, the cost, even assuming Con Ed would allow the location, isn't feasible given that it's already been established where it is based on direction from Con Ed.
You haven't established that it's not feasible. You're putting in one line in a letter that's going to cost $90,000 based on the applicants coming up with that number without any independent bidding or proof or plans or anything else like that. That is not competent evidence.
And I'm not 100% sure you've shown us that it was at the direction of Con Ed. I mean, that's just you know, the electrician says that's what the Con Ed told me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's enough for us to make a variance, which, I mean, I've been on this board a long time. Marty's been on a lot longer than me. I've never seen anything like this.
Ever.
And I'm not sure. It's not a road I want to go down. It's a road we might have to go down if Con Ed is really directing that they're not going to move it. But at this point, I wouldn't want to do it without a really good reason. Sarah, I think you said somebody in the community had their hand up.
Yeah, the homeowner.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. I'm just listening to everything that's going back and forth, and I just feel really inclined to say that, you know, feeling a little bit like the carpet's getting pulled out under us for no fault of our own. You know, like when we set up our service, Con Ed was here, and we have absolutely no power and control over where Con Ed tells us to set up our utility pole. They set it up. We did a renovation, like we got that permit closed out by the building department with a meter there. We were, as a homeowner, I was never told that this was going to be some temporary thing. We did our project, and at no point throughout our project were we planning to or do anything to violate some process. We were under the impression with a closed permit of the meter in that location, that meter location was fine as it was. And then because our house uses no propane, we are a net zero build, we have a huge electrical panel. We had no say in where to put that. I mean, and I will also note that I don't know what is trying to be preserved here, because on the lane there is another meter exposed in the setback. There's also, I will add that mailboxes can be and are, there's one that is enormous on our lane, and it's on the curb, and it's literally the size of a massive Amazon shipping box. And it has a street light attached to it. So not only do we have to look at that oversized thing on the setback, we have to look at it all night long because there's a street light attached to it. And I just feel like, what is being preserved on the lane? I mean, we're offering to screen it, we're offering to paint it, like we're offering to do what we can to make it work as is. And it's incredible to hear that you guys might actually require us to pay almost six figures to fix this. Like, we can show you receipts for the work that we paid that would have to all be undone. This isn't just, we're just overflating numbers. We will show you receipts. We have them all. The work was just done. It's not hard to find that. So I'm imploring you to consider that, like, this is a huge, not to mention it would impact our ability to even fully live in our space and use our garage. And we have electric cars, they have to be charged in our garage. Like, this is a huge impact on my family. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I hear the frustration, and I completely understand it. I just think that we've never approved a variance like this, and I'm really hesitant to do it because it is unsightly. It is something we've never done before, and it's something that if it comes up again, we've set a precedent. So.
But the precedent set. There's another meter on the street. There's a enormous, horrendous, ugly, massive mailbox on the setback with a street light on it. I mean, and we're offering to screen, like, ours will be screened. This other meter isn't screened. This mailbox is ridiculous. I can send you a picture. I would be happy for you to look at this thing. It's enormous. It's like, it's a full on, like, it's like a shed. It's ridiculous. So I just feel like
if it didn't require a variance, we have no
right,
say over it.
Right, but we're talking about the look of the lane and how it appears and the unsightliness. Like, it's not as though there is not one unsightly structure in the setback on Fargo Lane. And so it feels like, why suddenly for our property do we now have to look at incurring? I mean, it's not feasible. We cannot pay we do not have the ability to do that.
It goes back to, even if we could rewind the clock, right, and look at it at its inception, could we have had a different conversation with Con Ed as to where to locate it? Perhaps, again, none of us, we weren't there, John and I. But now that it's there and it's installed, even if we concede that there might be a feasible alternative, again, on balance, everything you just heard from Sarah about the feel of the lane and the community character and the lack of an environmental impact outweighs an alternative that even if we concede it's feasible, is an overall balancing test. And it's already been installed, so we're dealing with an existing condition. We're doing the best we can to screen it per the planning board's direction through all these plantings and the painting. And our understanding is it was never meant to be a temporary condition.
We just get the speaker's name before you, the lady, because the applicant's a corporation. We don't know who she was or she.
Sarah
Sarah
Cargill.
Carganis.
And are you the-
I own the LLC. I'm an owner of the
Okay.
home.
Can you spell
Her
your last
husband
name?
Evan is an experienced home builder, and so the cost estimates, that 90,000, a six-figure number, those are real numbers based on input from an experienced contractor.
Sarah, how do you spell your last name?
P like Peter, A-R, G like George, A, N like Nancy, O, S like Sam.
Okay, thanks. I'm taking the minutes tonight. Thank you.
And what's the name of the
Sure.
construction company experience you're telling us?
It's ETA, right?
No. He said that the construction
Oh,
company
the construction
is very
company.
Yeah.
experienced.
Yes,
Who are
it's
they?
ETA Construction.
And where are they located?
We're located in New York City,
Is there a street address?
110 William Street.
Okay.
New York, 10038.
What's the process to open up a case with Con Ed, just to make an inquiry? John, have you done that before, or?
That's something that's run by electricians, so it's usually you would have to request service. So I'm not sure what the process would be for this. So in a case where it's a new service, the electrician indicates that they want a new service, and then there's a case set up, and then there's a communication system that is their internal
Right, but
system.
Right, but my understanding is that Con Ed is gonna see, they're gonna say, why do you need service? Your service is set up.
Right.
And
This is closed. Right.
Yeah, as Con Ed doesn't
I
care
appreciate-
about our zoning board and planning board issues. Con Ed cares about that they have set up us up for service in a safe manner. And so when there's an attempt to do this, you guys can appreciate we're dealing with Con Ed. This isn't like a mom and pop electrical service. So, they're just like, well, you have service. Like, what do you want us to come out for? And we're going to say, because our zoning board wants us to explore other options for the pool. I mean, I don't know what they'd say. I guess we have to ask. But there's no problem with our service.
Get a
Our
license, you
service
should.
is
Listen,
functioning.
I'm not impressed with these anecdotal stories about what could happen, what might happen. Why don't you get a licensed electrician to come in, make an application to get this thing moved to a place that's not on the curb and see whether or not that's feasible.
But so
And I would say
but you
let's-
guys told us to look at it feasibility in the house last time. And so if that was required to look at all options, we would have been more prepared tonight, but we just came with the one option that you guys told us to consider.
No one gave you any instructions to do anything specific.
But we said options, and I was thinking after the meeting last time about, what would it cost to just flip it and put it on the backside of the pole? As an option. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the recommendation, but just as an option, like screening's an option.
Okay. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd
that's-
say let's adjourn this to our next meeting. And again, maybe come back with another, as Judd suggests, look, flip it. But also make contact with Con Ed and see if we can get this thing moved. And then come back to us and either tell us they've said absolutely not, or they've said yes. And, again, maybe some real nuts and bolts about the cost, where else it could go, that kind of thing. But it's gonna take something more than what you're giving us tonight, I think, to set a precedent like this.
And the board members, they can vote as they see fit. I'd like to see a licensed electrician offering an opinion about this can't be done any other way. And let them put it in that in writing, together with some
Okay.
actual.
I
real
just
calls.
I do want to just point out the precedent has been set. I think we've established that.
No, I don't think so, because we've never approved it. And look, nobody can come to us and say, you've approved this, now you need to approve mine. We've never done it, so. you
No,
know,
but
you're
aren't
the
there the five factors, right? That need
Yeah.
that need to be met. We believe we've met them.
But we respectfully disagree with you.
Is there anybody else on the board who wants to give sort of any direction to John? Or to the homeowner about what you'd like to see in the next meeting? Because I don't want to keep saying, come back, but I think we've all expressed some things we'd like to see.
Yeah,
Anybody?
I think Artie made a very good suggestion. Have an electrician go to Con Ed and tell them what the electrician wants to do. And we can, Con Ed will have an answer and you can tell us what the answer is.
I'd like to see the electrician come forward and give us the answer, not just the recital.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think about adjourning it, John?
I think that's probably where we're at this moment. I think, I worry that if the only way to move it forward is to get information from Con Ed, we may be here for very many months. If that becomes the test of where we are, but, we can do, I guess at this point, Brad, the best we can to.
John, I said this multiple times. I think you need to get a licensed electrician to
Right.
offer professional opinion about this setup.
Okay, so I think that's something that's obviously more feasible than maybe having Con Ed a written response to this. But yes, we can talk to the client about that and come back to you.
Yeah, and I keep,
Ahead of time so that we can give it to the village electrical engineers to look at and offer commentary back.
Yeah, I mean, our next meeting is in January, so you have a little time to work on this.
Okay,
and I also keep hearing that this is the first time that such a request has been made. I think something else that we'll look into is whether or not in the past, similar type utility facilities have been deemed structures or buildings that even trigger the need for front yard variances. So we'll look into that as well. We can come back to you with some information on that.
Okay, that would be great. That would be helpful. Excellent. Okay, sorry. I know I do hear the frustration and from all of you, and I do sympathize and understand we have all had our Con Ed issues, but I think we need to be careful when we're setting a precedent like this. So I appreciate your patience as much as you can give it to us, and we will see you at the next meeting. Thank you.
thank you.
All righty, so the next case is McCarthy, 84 Fargo Lane.
Good evening. Douglas McClure. I'm the architect for the McCarthy's at 84 Fargo Lane, right next door to your last project. We were in front of the board back in February of 2022 to get a variance for coverage and some other things. And you granted us that variance. Thank you very much. During construction, some changes were made that resulted in a change of coverage. And I'll share my screen so we can discuss that. I'm not on my usual device, so you'll have to bear with me for a second.
Yeah, for what you pull up there, Doug.
Yeah.
I,
You might want to test it first privately.
okay. That's not sharing yet. There we go.
Do a music video from last year.
Yeah, there you go. Can you see that?
We can.
Excellent.
Just have that black. Well,
Yeah.
can you get
I
rid of
don't
that
know
little?
what. I'm just going to deny that. Okay. Actually, let me zoom out a bit so I can start with the. How do I pan? This is very difficult here. No, that's not pan. I'll just do this. So this is the site plan as originally approved. We were building extending a deck with closing in some space below it. There was an existing stair here along the side of the house. And that was, it all was a lot of it was in the build outside of the building setback, because the configuration of the property doesn't really allow for any building within the building setback. You can see this dotted line right here. That's where the building would actually have to be. So you can't really do anything within the building setback, or you can do very little. During construction, a couple things happened. The contractor relocated the stair to this shape because the old stair was blocking a window. They added a air conditioner in this location, and then the site has the big thing was the site has a history of water erosion along this edge here. So they contacted separately from me a landscape designer who created what the survey calls a rain garden. It's actually a swale and then some gravel mulch, and at the same time rebuilt a portion of this. There's an existing stone retaining wall here, and from about this location on, that wall had fallen down, so she rebuilt that wall. It had not been shown on the previous surveys, but it was there. I came on the site and said, well, this isn't going to work. So we had some long discussions, and in talking with the planning board, determined that this area here is the actual swale, and that does not count for coverage. So we have removed all the rock mulch and replaced it with a shredded bark mulch in these areas. But the designer asked if they could keep the curbing for the design, and of course we kept the wall. So this curbing, the rebuilt wall, the stair, and the air conditioner increases the coverage over what you previously approved by 56 square feet. And we are asking to modify that original variance to increase it by 56 square feet.
Anybody have any questions for?
Oh, ma'am.
No. Anybody, Sarah, who wants to be heard on this?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, great. I think this is a very minor ask, and I think will be an improvement to the property. So I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll start with you, Artie.
Yes.
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 Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, you are approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too. Okay, and so now we are back to where we started, which is 202, right? Isn't that?
Yep.
Yep,
Yes, ma'am.
202 West Clinton Ave.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz. First and foremost, thank you for accommodating me and allowing us to slide into the last position. I'm sure my colleagues and teammates here are not thrilled that I pushed us to last, but I got double booked, and I'm pleased that I was able to get here in time to be here this evening. Here this evening representing Steve and Nadia Harrison, as the chair indicated, for 202 West Clinton. I'm joined by my colleague, Jacqueline Cohen, as well as our project engineer, Cyrus Miandoabi. Madam Chair, I know you were not at the September meeting. I'm not certain. I feel like we might have been missing one other member at that meeting, but we did do a full presentation of this application at the September meeting. I'm happy to take steps back and cover some of that if necessary. I'm going to start by simply reminding the board that we are here in connection with a coverage variance with regard to a home and improvements that predated my client's acquisition of the property. We've been in front of the planning board. We spent several months explaining the situation to the planning board before we were actually permitted to proceed before your board. We did explain to the board at the last meeting, and I'm going to hit some of the highlights, that what was precipitated here was initially my clients, after acquiring the property, sought to enlarge a rear patio behind their home to accommodate essentially an outdoor table for the family. As a result of that, they learned through the building department that they actually had a home that already significantly exceeded allowable coverage. They had not been aware of that. And as I walked the board through at some length and did the same with the planning board, this was not as a result of a lack of due diligence at the time of acquisition. At the time of acquisition, and we were not acquisition counsel, the attorney that had been retained to represent our client not only ran title, reviewed title, discussed title with the Harrison family, but actually went to Village Hall and met with the building department because there was so much activity with regard to this property throughout the years in terms of renovations, additions, etc. Having said all of that, kind of jumping to the end, the proposal that we have before you tonight would result in 5,340 square feet of coverage. That's after eliminating some existing coverage, not completing the patio extension that they sought to do. And this is on a lot where 3,230 square feet of coverage would otherwise technically be allowed. So we're asking for a 65% variance. As someone who is quite familiar with your board, with Irvington, with your coverage concerns, I recognize the fact that that is not an insignificant ask. However, given the facts and circumstances and the fact that most of the coverages I'm about to walk you through actually existed for some time, I gather unbeknownst to the building department. So let's take a few steps back. There was originally, board member Semetis was kind enough to share some information with our team at the last meeting that we were able to look into regarding some variance activity that we were not otherwise aware of initially. While it's informative, it doesn't really change the situation. The board had requested some clarification about that determination in 2005, 2006. At that point in time, there was 3,652 square feet of coverage. They did receive, the prior owners did receive a coverage variance in 2005 from your board, which approved coverage of 4,139 square feet, where 3,229 would have been allowed. So it was a variance of 910 square feet, or 28%. Again, there was 3,652 square feet existing. They were seeking, the prior owners, to push it up to 4,139. Apparently, a survey was done in July of 2006. That survey actually indicated an additional 493 square feet had already been installed, bringing the coverage at that time to 4,632 square feet. And somehow between 2006 and 2021, another 925 square feet was added. Again, all of this predates my client's acquisition. By the time my clients came to the property in 2021, there was 5,557 square feet. I'm assuming you're all somewhat familiar, but the coverage we're talking about really relates to decking along the side of the house, decking around the hot tub at the rear of the house, and a small patio and some retaining walls in the rear as well. Significantly, when my clients came to the property, at least to me significantly, there was quite a bit of bamboo that had been installed in the rear yard by the prior owner. Now, whether the bamboo had been placed there to minimize the visibility of what was going on at the rear of the property, I can't know. I can only speculate. But I will tell you that one of the first things that my clients did was remove the invasive species of the bamboo. Their neighbors were delighted not only that the bamboo came out, but that my clients were seeking to maintain and keep the property in clean, good, and wonderful order, as well as to make use of the rear yard with their two daughters, with the hot tub, etc. I mention that because neighbors, and it should be in your record, came out in support of this application. I think our neighbors are aware that the Harrisons essentially bought into an issue, bought into a problem, and were not seeking to create a problem, nor were they the ones who seemingly disregarded the village's coverage requirements and just essentially did what they chose. So what we're proposing tonight, as a result of the process we've been through with the planning board and your board, is to remove 217 square feet of coverage built by the prior owner. In addition, we would eliminate and remove 271 square feet of the new expansion of the rear patio that we really, the Harrisons genuinely really wanted, and were even somewhat reluctant to concede for purposes of this application process. But they have now been before village boards, yours and the planning board, for several months at significant time, energy, and expense. And they want to be good neighbors, they want to be good citizens, and they want to enjoy their backyard. What we would do is remove this, bringing the coverage down to 5,340 square feet, as I said at the outset. That would be 65% over allowable. I'll hit the 5 factors briefly. We've submitted this in writing to your board already. In sum, we believe the benefit to the applicant unquestionably and substantially outweighs the detriment to the surrounding neighborhood and the community. That's why our neighbors are not here in opposition to this. They actually have supported it. We don't believe there's an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood. This is a lovely neighborhood with people who make use of their property, and this is really designed to allow these folks to make use of their property. In terms of a feasible alternative, the Harrison's position is that they don't have a feasible alternative. They don't believe that they can and should have to eliminate further coverage in their rear yard. They believe it would adversely impact the functionality and the use and enjoyment of the hot tub and the decking that's surrounding the hot tub. It would, as Cyrus could speak to this if you need, there is substantial cost that they would incur if they now suddenly have to remove everything that's there. And the Harrisons who are on screen will tell you, in their mind, they paid for this. They paid the price for this home, believing that what they were buying was lawful based upon certificates of occupancy, certificates of compliance, etc. I also walked the board through last time the fact that even the Town of Greenberg assessment records indicate that there was a spa on the property, and that predated their acquisition of this property. So their understanding, rightfully, in our opinion, at the time they purchased the property, they had no reason to believe they were buying with violations in existence. In terms of environmental impact, they're actually proposing to remove coverage rather than add coverage. There is no environmental issue in terms of drainage right now. There's actually a rather elaborate subsurface drainage system that's on the property that, again, Cyrus can speak to if you wish. We mentioned this in our submission, but by eliminating the 271 and the 217 square feet that we've talked about, we actually only improve the overall environmental condition in terms of flooding, stormwater, et cetera. In terms of self-created hardship, frankly, it's our position that this situation, the hardship that we're dealing with, was created by our sellers. We wish it hadn't been. I wish that they had obviously continued to pursue variances as they were pursuing other improvements. They obviously chose not to, but we do not believe that the hardship here is self-created. And as you all know, even if it was self-created, that's not a dispositive factor. So I'm going to take a step to the side and say that from our position, while we know it's a big number and while we know coverage is critical, this is one of those situations where someone who bought a home in your community, did due diligence, had no reason to know that they were buying into a problem situation. They are asking your board to weigh the factors, to determine that the benefit outweighs the detriment, and they'd like the variance so that they can legalize what someone else already put there. In some instances, 10, 15 years ago, it's been, we believe. Having said that, we're happy to answer questions. I don't want to belabor because we did a rather extensive presentation last time, but we're happy to answer whatever you want. Our clients are here. Again, Cyrus is happy to walk you through the technical details of where we would eliminate, what we would eliminate. We're happy to share screen and walk you through this. I know some of you are rather familiar with these details. And again, I'll end by saying I appreciate Mr. Semetis sharing some information that he had. It was part of the storyline here, but if anything, it kind of breaks in our favor because somebody showed up at your board for an FAR and a coverage variance, got it, increased what was there, and then kept just doing it.
Do you have any information about other properties in the neighborhood in terms of their coverage?
Yes, Cyrus, you want to hit that? Well, he's pulling that up. The answer is yes. We did assemble that. I think it's on some materials that were submitted. Cyrus, I'll let you walk through it.
Yeah, we did a brief analysis of 4 or 5 different properties. Our coverage right now is at 165. The next closest would be 157 West Clinton Avenue at 137%.
Please tell me, anybody will increase that a little bit?
I'm sorry.
We're not as young as we used to be. Okay, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
Who is?
Okay. Okay. All right. Can you talk to us a little bit about if we were to insist on a decrease in coverage, what you would do and what that would consist of? Costs, trouble, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the only places that we reviewed with the clients and it would be a feasible would be to remove this area, which is a patio at grade. And then there's also a retaining wall, that's superfluous, that isn't necessary. But that's really all of the coverage that can be removed without significant costs. There's the grade comes down from here. This is much higher, and it comes down. So these retaining walls are necessary. The shading in this area that's created. I mean, either I joked before, either they have a mud pit or they have patio, because the way that the house is situated above, there's no light that can accommodate vegetation in this area. And really those are the two areas that are these are the two areas that we can remove relatively easily and with minimal cost.
And what would that amount to in terms of square footage?
These two are removed, so we're going from 558 to 534.
Isn't that the 217 that I referred to, Cyrus?
Correct. Yeah,
Yes. So, Madam Chair, that's what Cyrus was just talking about, the terrace on the left and the curved retaining wall. That is the 217 that I've told you. We've proposed to remove that. If your question goes beyond that, which I kind of think that was your question. So Cyrus, you feel free to help me, but I think the question is if we were to go beyond the 217, the answer to that, Madam Chair, members of the board, is we think that directly impacts functionality of the property. There is decking around the entire hot tub now. It's designed to provide ready and easy access as well as functionality for the hot tub. And it's not something that our clients are seeking to remove. They think it would create an adverse impact to them and their children. Likewise, the decking around the side of the house is one of the aspects of the house and the rooms on that side of the house that make the home attractive. And none of the neighbors are raising an issue about the decks along the side of the house. If we were in a situation, Madam Chair, where neighbors were objecting that this property was overwhelming and intruding into their use and enjoyment, I'd have a very different application. That's not the case here, which is why, again, I've said it, and I'll say it again, we believe the 5 factors boil down and tilt in our favor. So our clients really don't want to eliminate anything else.
Okay. Are there any questions from anybody else on the board?
Just two areas. Could you show us the photos of the patio back there and that little retaining wall you were talking about a moment ago?
Absolutely.
Please. That's the back of the house, obviously, right?
Correct. Yep. These are both pictures from this area looking this way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get closer to those patios at all, or is that just a distant shot that you have?
You can look through. This is the closest one.
Right. That's the deck you want to keep, correct, with the hot tub?
Correct. That's
the hot
it. That's
tub
the
with the
hot
deck.
tub, and that's the decking I referred to.
Just on the numbers, you had said with what you're willing to work with us on, you're going to be at 5,340 feet, correct?
That's correct. 5,340 feet.
And you did say, I thought, and I'm horrible at numbers, so please help me if I misstate something, that the approval from years ago was at 4,139 feet.
That is our understanding based upon the resolution that we reviewed. And Jacqueline or Cyrus, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 4,139, where 3,229 was otherwise allowable.
Okay. And you said that there was a survey around that time which showed coverage of 4,632 feet.
You're good with numbers. You're taking good notes, Artie. So the answer is correct.
No,
yes.
That's all. That's where I fall apart when I start doing the math here. So, so if let's presume that you were allowed to have the 4632. And
Correct.
that's, we don't see that hard, in paper, but there's a survey around the time they were approving things. If you're at 5340, isn't that only 13% over?
So the 4632, to the best
That
of
was
my
allowed.
knowledge, got me to
Let's
46,
assume that was left, right?
Right.
but that would have been 43% over allowable at that point in time. And then
When you
it
say allowable, when you say allowable, what are you talking about?
allowable, I'm still running it off of my base allowable coverage, which would have been 3229.
Run off the 4632, because if you've gotten the approvals with the 4632, for whatever reason, let's assume that's the case.
Yeah.
Now you're seeking 5340. Aren't you only 13% over?
No, you're starting at 143% over allowable. And you're increasing from
again?
there.
I'm sorry.
So, right, if you start at 632
Right.
and you go up to
5340.
5340
You're
is what Marty
708.
is saying.
You're 708 square feet over.
So-
What that 43 is.
If you made to this this graph over here, in 2006, we have a 4,632, which is 143% of allowable.
I think, hang on, Cyrus. I want to make sure I understand the question and how you're framing it. If we assume the 4632 is allowed, right?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So you're changing. So Cyrus, basically they're changing the base. You and I keep going back to the 3229. We're
Yeah.
now going to start at
Yes,
40.
I am better at math than you two. So
All right.
do that math for us. How much are
So-
you over
Right.
with 4632?
So 4632, we want to subtract 4632 from the 5340,
708.
5340. Right? The 5340, what I'm trying to get us to, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 2, 1.
About 15%, correct.
About 15. Yep.
Right.
That's what you
Yes.
said.
Sounds a lot better than 65.
Boy, I like
Yeah.
that. Look, I obviously we like that characterization a lot.
I'm not there yet, but that's another way of looking at it. But
Yeah.
even if you took your 4139, which we do say there's record that shows, right? 4139,
Correct.
I think it's 22% over.
It's probably
Again,
in the
please check
20s.
that out.
Correct.
Yes.
How much?
Cyrus, you can unshare. Cyrus, unshare and unshare as necessary so we can see the board. Thank you. No problem. So we agree. You are by doing it that way, you're acknowledging at least what our clients have experienced, which is, obviously sequentially over time, there was my phrase, not yours, coverage creep. And
I will say that I spoke with the village attorney, and she has indicated that, although I don't give a privileged communication, but I'm not worried about this one, that the 4139 in their mind is what has been approved of record, right? So that's the starting point. So, the question is whether you get to the 4632 or not. But I think then you're either at 22% over what's allowed, or you're 15% over what's allowed,
agreed.
right? So just as a discussion, I mean, you agree with those numbers.
We agree with those numbers, and utilizing that characterization of 22% over allowed, we would be less than at least one of our neighbors who appears to be 37% over what is allowed based upon what Cyrus walked you through a moment ago.
And what your team is talking about are things that are at grade. You're not building a sunroom that's up, that is a structure. You are building things at grade. The property's fenced and concealed. So if it's at grade, no one's really seeing it, right? Because
Correct.
it's at
I'm
grade.
only going to correct the record with, we're not building anything. We're
What's been built already is what I meant to
right.
say.
It's not insignificant. I'm not asking for forgiveness or asking for permission to do something. I'm actually cleaning up somebody else's problem that I bought.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I do. Could you go back to the picture of the backyard? And I think I noticed like a storm drain there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are two, I think.
And I know it's not an offset on coverage, but does that, I mean, if there is additional hardscape, on the property, that drain
Got
must help in some way too.
Sorry,
there's
talk for a
actually
minute
two
about
drains.
drainage.
I'm sorry.
No,
yeah,
but that's a drain to just help with, if there's a lot of hardscape on the property, that must,
Oh, the stormwater you're
Yeah,
concerned, right,
yeah.
right.
correct. There's two storm drains on the west side of the house. There's the one on this side, and then there's the one on this side, which, relative to this picture is over here. In plan, there's one drain shown on the survey here, and then there would be another one located at this location.
Any other comments?
I think in principle, I did not accept the fact of somebody buying a property that's, has way over variance and nobody realizes it. And feels they have a right to come and start with the property that they bought. I think we have to distinguish what we're doing here from what I just described. I think we have some numbers that have some justification,
Right.
but just in principle, I think it's important from my perspective.
From your perspective, yeah.
I just don't want us to be, I don't want to be in a position to have to say this, to have somebody say to me, look, I know this, we're way over, but we didn't know when we bought it. So, we want to add another 200 feet or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. That has been
Yeah.
really part of
Yeah.
what we do here. But based on all the mitigating circumstances, such as it's at grade, there is a tremendous storm water system underground, as evidenced by the two manholes and
Yeah.
whatever else is going on down there. The fact that the record might be a little bit confused as to years ago, one reason or another. That's just some my thoughts and when you take a vote on this.
Anybody else? All right, then, anybody online? Okay. Then I'll make a motion. I totally agree with what John said. I mean, we have people come before us all the time saying, this is how I bought it. But there's a little confusion about what number we should be starting from, but it looks like maybe we're talking about a 22% increase over what's been approved. As Artie points out, very importantly, it's all at grid level. You're actually removing some of the coverage, which we appreciate. And you seem to have gone to really a good extent. You can show us that you really did try to find out when the property was purchased, what was there and what was legal. And the record seems to have been muddied. And so for those reasons, I'm going to make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Great. Start with you, John.
Yes.
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 Okay, you're approved.
Thank you all. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
very much.
Everybody have
and-
a happy Thanksgiving.
Everybody has a nice holiday.
Yes,
Thank
thank you.
you.
It's up to the chairperson.
Good.
Are we
Yep.
adjourned, Mr.
Yes.